If you want to prove that Gavin Newsom is a full-blown psychopath and wonder how come is he still in office, nothing beats this Thomas Hawke post. But with a caveat. Listen, think about this for a second if you're a guy. Think about who your best friend is right now. Literally say their name in your head right now. Say it again. Now, if your best friend is married or has a girlfriend, say her name in your head. Now, imagine banging your best friend's wife for 10 months behind his back. Now, also imagine that your best friend, say his name again, works for you. You see him every single day at the office, and every day for 10 months you look him in the eye and act like everything between the two of you is great. You talk with him day in and day out, all the while knowing what you're doing. You make small talk, you go out for beers, you talk about the game last night every single day, all the while you're banging his wife behind his back. Also imagine your best friend and his wife have a 1-year-old son. While you're banging his wife and complimenting her on taking her pregnancy weight off, sending her home when you're done with her with your private driver. Because that's what Gavin Newsom did to his best friend and Deputy Chief of Staff Alex Turk. He banged his wife over and over and over again for 10 months. He spent the night with her in expensive hotel rooms when she was blackout drunk. Sounds like grape to me. He blew up her phone with texts for hookups, and he did all this knowing she had a drinking problem with his best friend's wife. It takes a special type of sociopath to be able to do that. I hope Ruby Ripe's essay in Vanity Fair today is an Eric Swalwell wake-up moment for Gavin Newsom and his political future. Now, a small correction in my humble opinion. I don't think this is sociopathic behavior. This is full-blown psychopath that we're talking about. Because let's jump forward 20 years, and Ruby Ripe, who is the woman in the middle of that crater, finally broke 2 decades of silence with an explosive essay published on Vanity Fair. And if you read between the lines of her account, it is a terrifying window into how political psychopaths operate, how power distorts reality, and how the guys who end up running the world process human beings like disposable props. So when Ruby entered rehab, no one was shocked, only relieved, because her drinking had stopped being private long before, and rumors about the affair had surfaced long before treatment, meaning nearly everyone seemed to know except the one person who most needed to know, her husband. So she had been sleeping with his boss, who was also her boss, and who happened to be the mayor of San Francisco. She had believed that getting sober would put her life back together, but instead it left her alone with the truth. Because inside the facility, when the question of telling her husband came up, her therapist leaned forward to deliver the recommendation of the care team. They thought it was best for her sobriety not to tell him, arguing that because this involved a public figure, the fallout could be devastating and threaten her recovery. So, that verdict did not sit right with her. However, because even then she knew telling Alex was necessary, yet once home from rehab, she abandoned the structured recovery and tried to do sobriety on her own, staying dry for months while each day her husband went to work for the man who had been sleeping with his wife. A silence that silence began to feel almost criminal. But the story that, again, should have destroyed Gavin Newsom's career decades ago starts with an initial meeting that traces back to San Francisco City Hall during Mayor Willie L. Brown Jr.'s administration, when she was the mayor's lead scheduler and Alex directed the Office of Neighborhood Services. So for months, Newsom found reasons to stop by her office. A co-worker told her that he had asked about her, and though that she initially said she wasn't interested, but he kept coming by, eventually bringing matzo ball soup from Mac's Deli or a mixtape. Small details. Casual, boss stuff, I guess. But one afternoon, while she was eating a salad at her desk, Newsom walked in and sat down across from her. She looked up to meet his large, brown, steady eyes, and something shifted as she allowed herself to see what was there all along, noticing how he carried himself with an effortless assurance and gravity. Yeah, power has that effect, especially if you look like Patrick Bateman. Now, on New Year's Eve, as time clicked to 2000, they kissed for the first time on a friend's back porch, pressed against the wall as midnight erupted across the city with fireworks, car horns, and the collective exhale of a century ending, an event that felt to her like a beginning. So as Brown turned out, the newlyweds were recruited to join the next mayoral campaign, where a young supervisor from District 2 entered the race. Often described as Kennedy-esque, placing Alex as field director and Ruby as deputy finance director. So they moved through those months side by side, through her pregnancy and through long stretches when victory felt uncertain. So when their candidate won with 53% of the vote, they walked into City Hall together, convinced they were building something new. 1 year into the administration, the city was still carrying the energy of a political dawn behind a mayor whose charisma seemed to gather momentum, leading him to legalize same-sex marriage just a month after taking office, while Ruby was 7 months pregnant, standing beneath the dome in a maternity robe dress and leopard kitten heels deputized to marry couples. So the administration was settling into itself while she served as commission secretary, coordinating appointments down the hall from her husband's office, where he served as deputy chief of staff, making for quiet mornings where she would bring him 2 hard-boiled eggs in a Tupperware container while he looked up from his desk and smiled. Eventually, she was told her office had been reassigned because the mayor wanted her at the desk outside his door as a gatekeeper. Although losing her original office felt like a demotion, her new desk quickly became a nerve center where she managed the steady stream of people who wanted something from Newsom, passing notes on thick yellow index cards. And yeah, being the literal gatekeeper of a powerful man makes you feel good, empowered. That tracks, and it could be intoxicating. So one night, the staff met at a Mexican restaurant on Lombard Street, surrounded by warm tortilla chips, limes, and sweating margaritas, when the mayor suddenly pointed at her across the table and outwardly complimented her on losing her pregnancy weight. A moment that made her reach for another chip and stare at her husband's margarita, sitting on her hands to wait out another self-enforced stretch of sobriety. But after that, she started paying closer attention to what she wore. Chanel makeup, yellow silk dresses, pink patent leather heels, and tied pencil skirts for senior staff meetings in his private office. Yet, those self-willed stints of sobriety grew fewer and farther between until they stopped altogether. So if there was a place it actually started, it was at an afternoon wedding over a 4th of July weekend in Napa Valley, where she wore a wide strapless dress despite her mother's warning, drinking champagne, then wine, and then more wine until her dinner went untouched. So she and her boss ended up in the narrow hallway outside the bathroom at the same time, standing in a tight space where the silence stretched. And when he offered his usual shy smile, she held his gaze longer than she should have, shifting the air between them. So by the time night fell, she was sitting on the edge of a hot tub with her feet in the water while he sat across from her, slipping off his shoes and socks to roll up his pant legs. Her husband left soon after, irritated that she wanted to keep partying, while he drove home to their 1-year-old son. The next clear memory involved getting into the back of her boss's chauffeur town car, heading to the Carneros Inn, stretching her legs across the center console while he sat in the front seat, reaching back to massage her foot in a gesture half hidden inside a loud vehicle. So she woke the next morning beside him, still dressed, shivering, with a dress soaked from the waist down because she had passed out and wet the bed, prompting her to gather her clutch and heels to leave quickly while he was still asleep. Yes. So, a few days later at work, he slipped her gold bracelet onto her desk as he passed, which was a gift from her grandmother that she left behind in the hotel room, and kept walking as they pretended that nothing had changed, even though everything had, of course. So the boundaries began to disintegrate as she lingered in doorways and positioned herself within his sight line, turning texts from work into something else while her phone lit up with messages asking where she was, leading her to meet him at his penthouse in Russian Hill, a private back room in a North Beach bar, or the W Hotel in Los Angeles. So the encounter was not about love or romance, but rather an intoxication born from proximity to power, being the chosen one, and feeling newly visible after the strain of motherhood and sobriety. So, the risk, and this is important because the risk amplifies everything. The risk flooded her bloodstream every time she walked down the corridors of City Hall in stilettos. So when she rode with him to his Russian Hill penthouse, the driver was told to wait, leaving the black Lincoln idling at the curb in the early hours of the morning, further humiliating her with the certainty that the driver knew what was happening. So one night at his place, after she knocked over a glass of red wine onto his pale rug, he scrubbed furiously at the carpet with a washcloth, looking up in frustration to tell her they couldn't do this anymore and that she couldn't keep doing this to Alex. But despite these moments, the encounters continued for months, leading her to come home at 3 in the morning, wasted, and slide into bed beside her sleeping husband, begging him the next morning to not let her drink tonight, while he naively asked if she could just stick to 2 glasses of Chardonnay. So during a trip of Los Angeles, she met him at the W Hotel bar, where after a blur of heavy drinking, she woke beside him the next morning to find tiny shirt buttons scattered like coins across the floor, having torn every single button off his shirt in a blackout. So, as her life spiraled, she turned to antabuse to force sobriety, but after bargaining with herself at a private party, she drank Chardonnay anyway, causing her face to swell red while her eyelids became slits. And eventually she abandoned the pill and turned to baby powder, which allowed her to drink twice as much for twice as long. Yeah, not a great plan. So people wonder how Alex didn't know, but as her sister observed, Alex was so devoted to his job and his boss and his 1-year-old baby that he chose not to see the deterioration happening right in front of him. So eventually, her sister trailed her through the night and drove her to the emergency room at 5 in the morning for an unstoppable nosebleed, offering to have their father pay for rehab if she agreed to go. So taken into a treatment center in Arizona for 7 weeks, she wrote 2 letters. One to resign from City Hall, and one to end the affair, while her sister called the mayor directly to warn him to stay away. When she returned home, she remained silent for months while Alex worked late nights managing the mayor's re-election campaign until one dark night at her parents' house, she drafted a plain email confessing to the affair, sent it, and turned off her phone. The next morning, Alex was standing in the kitchen, his face drained of all color, announcing in a careful, measured voice that he needed a few weeks to think before packing a bag and leaving. He requested a meeting with the mayor, who was attending the World Economic Forum in Davos, and upon the mayor's return, Alex walked into City Hall to look his boss in the eye, one last time before resigning, sending the scandal into the local and national headlines. In the aftermath, commentary exploded, including public remarks from the mayor's new girlfriend, claiming that Ruby was the culprit and calling her bad news. Yet, advice from none other than Kamala Harris in the flesh persuaded Ruby to stay quiet and avoid publishing a memoir while her life was still in wreckage. So Alex never slept under the same roof with her again, as the confession permanently broke his trust, shifting his focus toward trying to make sense of his upended life, work, and financial future. So, nearly 2 decades later, an advisor to her former boss called to give a heads up about his upcoming memoir, admitting with an uncomfortable laugh that we all remember things differently when asked if the book told the truth. And this is the cherry on top. In Newsom's account, he reframed the event as the briefest of affairs and claimed he was the one who came clean to Alex. Yeah, not so subtle details that attempted to rewrite history. So, yeah, it is still my question. By any measure, Gavin Newsom shouldn't be anything today, let alone a prominent political figure in office in one of the greatest states of the United States. But I guess that's how all this works. But, well, let me know what you think about this in the comments, and make sure that you download my free 100 body language tips right in the description of this video. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Body Language Guy. Much love and bliss.